My name is Umar Farooq, and here my teammates Satya Srinivas, Pathim Prabhakar, and Hitesh Abnani. We are going to discuss about real-time OS, specifically Symbian OS. Let's discuss about what is real-time operating system. It is an operating system that are intended for real-time applications. And what is a real-time application? A real-time application is an application that guarantees both correctness of result and the added constant of meeting a deadline. And it is an operating system which follows the real-time criteria. All the components of real-time operating system must have the properties efficiency, predictability, and timeliness. All these are the very important ones. Now let's go inside the Symbian operating system. What is actually a Symbian? It is a licensing company owned by big mobile companies like Ericsson, Nokia, Panasonic, Samsung, and Sony Ericsson. And specifically, Symbian OS is an operating system for data-enabled mobile devices. And the characteristics of Symbian OS are integrated multi-mode mobile telephony, open application environment, open standards and interoperability, multitasking, fully object-oriented and component-based, flexible user interface design. The special features are error handling, which has cleanup stack and two-phase constructions, and the other one is active object, which implements multitasking without using multi-thread. One active scheduler per thread cooperating with one or more active objects. No preemptive, no mutual execution codes are needed. The Symbian OS application runtimes are Java, Flash, Python, .NET. And here are the choice of development languages. And here it is a choice of development languages. We see various languages on the diagram like Web, Flash, Python, Java, PIPS, and Symbian C++. And the Symbian C++ has the most functionality and performance for the Symbian OS. And let's discuss about the structure of Symbian OS applications. The Symbian OS applications are object-oriented, and it's based on the model view controller model that allows for clean separation of the user interface from the application logic. A Symbian OS application consists of C++ header and source files that define and implement the classes that together make up the application. These classes are the application class, the document, and the data model class, and a user interface class. In addition, UIQ applications have one or more view classes. And this diagram discusses the application structure. It starts with an application and it creates a document which has a data model in it, and it creates a user interface with command handler which has lots of views, and the user can interact with this user interface through a controller. And this is an Symbian OS architecture, and let's discuss each layer on the next slide. Now let me discuss about the first layer, which is user interface framework layer. It is the topmost layer of Symbian OS. The user interface framework layer provides the frameworks and the libraries for constructing a user interface, including the basic class hierarchies for user interface controls and other frameworks and utilities used by user interface components. The UI framework layer also includes a number of specialized graphics-based frameworks which are used by the user interface, but which are also available to applications, including the animation framework, the front-end processor based framework, and grid. The user interface architecture in Symbian OS is based on the core framework called UCON and a class hierarchy for user interface control called the control environment. Together, they provide the framework which defines basic GUI behavior. UECON was originally created as refactoring of UECON user interface library, which was part of the earliest versions of the operating system. UECON was created to support easy user interface customization, including look and feel modules. And the next service layer is the application service layer. The application service layer provides support independent of the user interface for applications on the Symbian OS. These services divide into three broad groupings. The system level services used by all applications, for example text handling, services that support generic types of application and application like services, for example personal productivity applications, and data synchronization services, which also included a number of key application engines which are used and extended by licenses, as well as legacy engines. Services based on more generic but application centric technologies, for example mail, messaging, and browsing. Example messaging store, MIME recognition framework, HTTP transport framework. And next is the OS services layer. The third layer is the OS services layer. It has generic operating system services, communication services, multimedia and graphics services, and connectivity services. For the Symbian OS, it's the kernel service, and the hardware interface layer contains the operating system kernel itself and the supporting components which abstract the interface to the underlying hardware, including logical and physical device drivers and variant support, which implements pre-packaged support for the standard supported platforms, including the emulator and the reference hardware boards. In release up to Symbian OS version 8, the kernel was the EKA1 kernel architecture 1. the original Symbian OS kernel. In Symbian OS version 8, the EKA2 kernel architecture to a real-time kernel shipped for the first time as an option. From Symbian OS version 9, EKA1 no longer ships and all systems are based on the real-time EKA2 kernel. Now let's discuss about the Symbian OS kernel. Here we use two kernels, the one is Symbian OS kernel and the other one is called Nano kernel. Now let's discuss about the Symbian OS kernel. Generally, the kernel is responsible for the CPU and the memory, and it has a preemptive multi-threading, and this especially EKA2 is real-time, its services are mostly bounded. It contains a nano kernel which provides the most basic OS facilities upon which other layers can be built. EKA2 kernel is responsible for memory management, task management and task scheduling as well. Symbian OS and the EKA2 are modulars. EKA2 is a single user and EKA2 is a priority-based multitasking OS allocating CPU time based on a thread priority. It switches CPU time between multiple threads, giving the user of the mobile phone the impression that multiple applications are running at the same time. Now let's discuss about the nano kernel. Symbian uses the term nano kernel, but it is really a microkernel. Why use a nano kernel? It's very low and predictable interrupt and thread latencies. It provides simple and supervisor mode threads along with their scheduling and synchronization operations. Services are more primitive than most embedded RTOS, but enough to provide GSM signaling stack. Now talking about the limitations of the nano kernel, it does not do any dynamic memory allocation, that is, it cannot allocate or free memory. In all of the nano kernel's operation, it assumes that memory has been pre-allocated by other parts of the operating system. Now let's discuss about the advantage of the Symbian OS. It is an open platform on C++, which is an object-oriented concept which is easy to configure, giving an additional feature of power management like power saving. It has fully multitasking. It is small but with lots of inbuilt features. It has high resolution support and it has seamless connectivity for music and pictures and so on. And the disadvantage is it has no virtual memory. The only storage available to the operating system on this platform is memory that they do not come with disk drive. And it is a smaller system. From PDS to smartphones to higher level handheld devices, it do not support a demand based virtual memory. And the most thing is like it's not available for PCs. Now let's conclude the topic about Symbian OS. It is a robust multitasking operating system designed specifically for real world wireless environments and the constraints of mobile phones, including limited amount of memory. Symbian OS is natively IP based with fully integrated communications and messaging. It supports all the leading industry standards that will be essential for this generation of data enabled mobile phones. Symbian OS enables a large community of developers, and the open platform allows the installation of third party software to further enhance the platform. And that's it with our presentation. Thank you.